The Battle of the Yalu River, April 30th to May 1st, 1904, was one of the most significant early engagements in the Russo-Japanese War, marking a decisive victory for Japan and highlighting its growing military power. Fought near the Yalu River along the border between China and Korea, the battle was a key turning point, as it set the stage for Japan's domination in the war and signaled the vulnerability of Russian forces. Background: Prelude to the battle. The Russo-Japanese War, ignited by imperial ambitions in Manchuria and Korea, was already underway by the time the Battle of the Yalu River occurred. After Japan's surprise attack on Port Arthur and their initial victories at sea, the war shifted to the land-based conflict in Manchuria. Japan sought to cut off Russian forces in the region and gain control over strategic territories, while Russia, facing significant logistical challenges, hoped to hold onto its imperial holdings. Korean Peninsula. Japan's forces had already secured a foothold in Korea and were now focused on advancing into Manchuria, which was critical for controlling the Korean peninsula and blocking Russian expansion. Russian forces. The Russian 2nd Pacific Squadron, under General Alexander Zasulich, was stationed in Manchuria, but its forces were scattered, undersupplied, and poorly coordinated, making them vulnerable to Japanese military tactics. The battle, Japanese pincer attack. The Battle of the Yalu River was essentially a clash of Japanese mobility and firepower against Russian stagnation and weak command. The Japanese military, under the command of General Kuroki Tamamoto, launched a pincer movement designed to encircle and destroy Russian forces. Japanese strategy. The Japanese army effectively used their well-coordinated infantry, artillery, and modern military tactics to outmaneuver the Russian forces. Their mobility and superior communication enabled them to position forces in a way that overwhelmed the Russian defenders. Russian response. The Russians, despite having a larger force, were hampered by poor leadership, logistical issues, and the inability to coordinate their troops effectively. The Russians were forced to retreat after suffering heavy casualties. Outcome and impact. The Battle of the Yalu River resulted in a decisive victory for Japan. The Russian retreat from the battlefield further destabilized Russian positions in the region and exposed their inability to match Japan's tactical and technological advantages. Losses. The Russians lost approximately 3,000 men, while Japan's losses were around 1,000. Japanese momentum. The victory at Yalu gave Japan a significant morale boost and cemented their reputation as a rising military power on the world stage. It also allowed Japan to advance deeper into Manchuria, placing further pressure on the Russian forces and securing critical strategic territory. Conclusion. The Battle of the Yalu River was a major turning point in the Russo-Japanese War, showcasing Japan's military competence and signaling the collapse of Russian dominance in East Asia. The outcome of the battle paved the way for subsequent Japanese successes and weakened Russia's position, ultimately leading to a peace settlement under the Treaty of Portsmouth, 1905. Japan's victory at Yalu was a pivotal moment in history, as it signaled the rise of Japan as a new imperial power in the East.